I will introduce myself. I'm Laurie Kavanaugh. I'm the assistant director here at the library, and I'm very happy to welcome our panel of Coffee with Local Authors today. The first one we will have speaking is Carolyn Killian. She's the author of a picture book series, but the B. Beluga series. We'll have Dan Manning. He writes as C.L. Manning. He's written his first novel, Rhodesian Doll Hunt, and Lisa Braxton. Her new book is a memoir following her previous novel. So I'll be giving more detailed introductions of each. Each author will have a little time to speak about their book and their writing and their publishing experience. And then they'll have a little time for questions, each of them. And then at the end, we'll have a general question and answer session. So keep your questions in mind. So let's begin. Braintree resident Carolyn Killian. Carolyn Killian is the author of a series of children's picture books illustrated by Annabelle Zhang.
Yeah.
Annabelle Zhang, all featuring the cutest little baby beluga whale. Starting with B. Beluga and the Magic Tutu in 2020, the self-published series includes B. Beluga Meets a New Friend and B. Beluga's first yoga class, as well as the latest one, which is coming soon, called B. Beluga's Big Adventure. Very soon.
Very soon.
Carolyn works full-time as a dance studio owner and children's yoga and relaxation instructor. She runs ADK Dance Studio in Braintree Square with her daughter, Amy. Please welcome Carolyn Killian, author of the B. Beluga picture book series.
Thank you. So Laurie just cut my speech down a few minutes with all that info, so great. So I'm married to my husband, Scott. He's a minister here in Braintree. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident of Braintree, except for a few years where we lived out of town. I spent the first 35 years of my career as a legal secretary, starting when I was aged 15. It was early. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I got laid off from the office, which was actually a blessing, and concentrated just on the dance studio. So in my downtime, I took a yoga teacher training class for children and got certified in that. And then in the spring of 2021, when I was going to teach my first yoga class, I had a companion book that I was going to do with the class, reading a book, doing yoga poses. And I rented from the library this beautiful book called Breathe by Scott Magoon. If anyone knows this book, if they have children, it is simple, few words, but beautiful. He wrote it and he illustrated it, and the illustrations were beautiful. But as I was reading it and doing it, I was like, you know what? There's not that many words in this book, so I think I could write a children's book. How hard could it be? And I counted. There's 48 words in the entire children's book of his. But again, beautifully written, beautifully illustrated. So I had a thought in my head of what the story would be, and I figured it would make sense to tie it into the dance studio, hence B. Beluga and the Magic Tutu. So it's about a young beluga who starts her first dance class. Her teacher gives her this sparkly, fluffy, beautiful magic tutu. And she dances with it, and she practices, and then when it's time for the big recital, she loses it, and she can't find it, and she doesn't know what to do. So she talks to her teacher, and her teacher assures her that there's no magic in this fluffy magic tutu, and she should dance without it. And so she goes on to do the most spectacular dance without it, and the magic of the tutu was really in her heart, not in the tutu. So that was the first idea I had. So it came about all rather quickly in my head. I wrote it pretty quickly. I didn't know how to illustrate it because I don't draw. So I talked to a friend of mine from high school who is a professional children's book illustrator. And she was nice enough to give me a lot of tips and hints and talked about Amazon KDP, which a lot of self-publishers use if they don't use a different company, which is a Kindle Direct Publishing. And then she gave me a quote for her work, which I couldn't afford. And I knew I couldn't afford it. She knew that, but she was nice, and she gave me lovely information. Her name's Michelle Cates Greeter. If you ever see any of her work, she's lovely. So I looked on a third-party freelance site called Fiverr, And they have people that do everything on there. They do illustrations, they do formatting, they do resumes, they do anything you need done as a freelance person, they can do on there. So I went through 3 trial ones. I did like a cover, the first cover page, and I tried 3 of them, and on the 3rd one, I loved it, and that was Annabelle. So it all went really, really quickly. So I think start to finish, I wrote it probably between February and March. I gave it to the illustrator in April, early April, and she had it done by May 17th. And it was done. The second problem was finding someone to format it. So I went through, again, 2 that didn't go so well with the first 2 on Fiverr, but then I found a lovely woman in Pakistan, because it's international people, who formats all the books. She's done all of them for me. And once that's done, I loaded it up to Amazon. And mine are paperback. They're 30 pages or so. So it was a day later, it was live on Amazon, and all of a sudden I was a published author. Self-published, but it was exciting. So that was the first book. I had the idea to include the kids from the dance studio, so I invited them all to draw a picture, if they wanted to include in the book of what they thought Bee Beluga and the Tutu would look like. So in each of the books, there is a page where the kids' drawings are all included. And so it has their name, their age. Some of the pictures are great. Some of them you'd like, what is that? I have no idea what that is, but it's okay. So it was good because they were included in it, and it also helped, I think, sell some books because the parents were like, oh, I'd like a copy of that. My kids' drawings are in there. So we do that for all the books. So each one, different kids, different drawings. It's cute, and the kids love seeing their own stuff in the books. So from there, I had the idea for a second book, which was Bee Beluga Meets a New Friend. I did that in, I think, the same fall of 2021. Again, my mind was working, and it all went pretty quickly. So I wrote it, sent it off to the illustrator, had it done, but it didn't get done until December, like the end of December, which is a bad time to publish a book because it's like after Christmas. Like, it's not really a good time, so it's fine. But this one's about her going on vacation and meeting a new friend and then figuring out how to stay in touch with someone because they loved each other when they met. And so it's an ode to my friendship with an exchange student from high school, Gazina, that we pen-palled after she went back home after senior year until the internet came about, and then we emailed, and now we see each other live, so it's great. And then in the spring, I did the third book with the yoga, went back to the dance roots, figuring it might sell some more books within the studio because I was doing yoga too. This one features a boy in it. Some of them have boys and girls, but this one had a main character that was a boy, which I thought was a good thing. And that's about her trying a new class for the first time, and she has her friend, and they're both nervous about doing the poses, and they help each other with each of the poses that they're nervous about, and the teacher notices that. And so all the descriptions are on the back if you want to take a read afterwards, but a really sweet little story. So around the time that the last one came out, I said to the illustrator, because we don't really know anything about each other just through chat through this Fiverr, because it's a third party, I said, can I feature you on Facebook and write something about you? I don't really know much about you. I did a little research, and I figured out she was in Massachusetts. I thought she was from Wayland. I thought she was young, like in high school maybe, but I wasn't sure. So come to find out, she was going into her junior year when this book came out in the fall of 2022. So that meant when I did the first one, she was a freshman. And I was like, oh my goodness, she's amazing. And she is. She's very mature for her age. I've never met her. It's been 3 years. And I think I'm going to meet her next Thursday. I'm doing another talk for another group at our church. And so I think she's coming to that, which is great, before she goes to college. So the only challenge with that was when I wrote the fourth book. It took me a while, about a year, to come up with the idea and finish it. It was harder this time. And when I went to her in the fall, I said, can you do this book? And she said, well, I have to get my college applications in, so you'll have to wait a little while. I said, okay. So I waited till January, and then she finally started it. So it's final edits were in this past Thursday, and hopefully it'll be up and ready in the next week or two at the most. So, and that is Bee Beluga's Big Adventure, which might be one of my favorites because the artwork is incredible. It features the northern lights, and it's beautiful. Sunsets, and it's really pretty. So, I think that is about it. I'll give you a few fun facts if you want fun facts. I was born in Warwick, Rhode Island, so I think that's where my love of the ocean and nautical comes in. I wanted to be a marine biologist as a kid, so that makes sense too. All of my characters are named after family friends, special people in my life, or characters. I'm a huge cozy mystery reader. Huge, read it all the time. I fall asleep to it, but I'm a big Little House on the Prairie fan, and I named the new books. Are you? We just went to a festival in California, my husband and I. Amazing. Named in the last book, the newest book, it features a narwhal, so her name is Nellie after Nellie from there. My dream is to write a cozy mystery. I have the title in my head, but I don't know if I'm capable of a full book, but we'll see at some point. My husband and my daughter are my proofreaders. They're my editors. They're my sounding boards. And finally, my mom will be finally happy to have a character named after her, because the first 3 she did not. And she was like, wait a minute, when am I going to get a character? So she is in the newest book. So thank you.
Perfect timing, Carolyn.
Oh,
I don't know if we'll see Bee Beluga on the prairie to
No.
combine. No.
I don't
That
think
won't
so.
work. Do we have any questions for Carolyn?
I'm kind of wondering if you, for the yoga class,
Yeah.
downward whale, upward whale, have you got a pose?
Oh, let me repeat the question so we make sure everybody gets it. The question is, how do you have Bee doing yoga poses as a beluga whale? I think that's the question, right? Yeah.
Something. So there is a whale pose, technically, but in the book, there's basically 5 poses that, as you read along, the first one is a breathing, the second one is the tree pose, where they have to balance. So that was one of the problems. She has to balance on her fluke, and she doesn't think she can balance, and Thomas the turtle helps her. There's a snake pose where they're just on their stomachs. There's a back pose where the turtle is nervous because he can't get off his back, because turtles can't turn over. So Bee assures him that she will help him up at the end of the pose, and she does. I try to keep it like, the flukes and the terminology correct, but like their teacher is an orca. Technically, orcas eat belugas, so not really technically all correct, but I love orcas, so hence they're in the book. So the poses, there's 5 poses in the book, and of course you can do more during a class, but it helps as you guide the class along to stop, you do the pose, you continue reading, do the pose. So, yeah.
That's great. A yoga story time.
Yeah.
Kind of. Any other questions for Carolyn? Go ahead. The age level for the books.
So I would say for them to sort of comprehend it, because they're a little wordier than a picture book, ages like 2 to 7 or 8 is a good age. Around 7 or 8, they can kind of read it themselves, which is good. But I get a lot of, I give them for baby things, because they'll grow with them, and a lot of people buy them as baby gifts for showers and things like that. So any age, the parents can read it to them, but I'd say 2 to 8 is like the ideal.
I'm 54. I like
Scott says he's 54 and he likes them. I had a question. Do your words ever change after you've seen the illustrations that Annabelle does? Or does she pretty much follow what you've written to develop the illustration?
They don't change dramatically, but once she's done it, I might edit it because it sounds better, but not really with the artwork. But she's really good at, I kind of give her the script, and then underneath it, I write some ideas of what I think the artwork would look like in my head. But she's really the one that takes it and goes with it. And if I have to add, like, oh, can you add some rocks? She'll add rocks. But she's good. For being so young, she's amazing. So, Yeah.
It's great for her resume, too.
Yeah. So I asked her what she was going to do in college. I said, are you going to go for illustrating or drawing or art? She said, no, I'm going to pre-med. Like, oh, okay. Oh, that'll take some planning for the next book then.
All right, if we could have another, one quick question. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's take that at the end, okay? Don't let me forget. We'll ask. That's about a general publishing question on Amazon, so we can do that at the end. Yeah. All right. Can we have another round of applause for Carolyn? Thank you. First, I'm going to introduce you.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Our next speaker. You want to set that up, or?
Sure.
Um,
I'm old school.
We are doing this as a hybrid meeting as well as recording for BCAM, so we have a lot of technical balls in the air right now. So I will start with the introduction while Dan is setting up, and I hope, can you all hear me okay? Okay. A graduate of Northeastern, Dan Manning has managed clinical laboratories at MIT and academic medical centers in Boston, performed research at the University of Lund Hospital in Sweden, and founded an international exchange of medical laboratory scientists that spanned 11 countries. An avid traveler, he has journaled his way through over 50 countries. He plays guitar, writes songs, hikes, fishes for striped bass, and has climbed mountains, including Kilimanjaro, the Matterhorn, Mount Kenya, and several peaks in the Andes. I'm so impressed by that. Now he has also written a debut novel. Please welcome Dan Manning, writing as C.L. Manning, author of Rhodesian Doll Hunt.
Thank you, Laurie. So first of all, I know you came here to see a writer, but I'm not a writer. I'm an author. I have the T-shirt. No, I'm a scientist. I'm a mountain climber. I know something about healthcare IT, but I do write. These are journals from my travels, and I've kept them, and they just keep looking at me saying, "What are you going to do with me?" So this one particular journal. Oh, by the way, if you want your money back for me not being a writer, she's right over there. Laurie told me she'd double your money. This journal has been speaking to me for a long time. This was a trip in 1979 and 80. It was over a year to Africa. Now, a little background, my buddy and I, Mad Dog, from high school, decided we're going to buy a one-way ticket, quit our jobs, buy a one-way ticket somewhere, and just travel. So at the time, Mozambique is having a civil war in Africa. Idi Amin is killing people in Uganda. In West Africa, there's riots over the price of rice. Rhodesia is having a bush war to hold on to white minority rule. It's been going on for 14 years. There's apartheid in South Africa. So we decide, let's go to Africa. So we do. We buy a one-way ticket to Liberia, and we meet our buddy, Bubba. And he's in the Peace Corps over there. We get introduced to this research lab. This is all true. They're doing hepatitis research, working on a vaccine. They have chimps, and very impressive place. We go there, we travel around West Africa. We eat termites, we eat bush rat. We travel in money buses with 50 people and chickens and everything. Two Catholics and an atheist going into a mosque. It sounds like a joke in a bar, but it was an incredible trip. Then my buddy Mad Dog and I left Bubba, do his Peace Corps duties, flew to South Africa, joined a camping trip that was going up to Nairobi, which is about 3,000 miles. And you have to be on a vehicle if you want to see the animals, the rhinos, the hippos, etc. So we joined this trip. We go up through the Okavango swamps. We go up past the Kalahari Desert, and we get to the northern fringes of Botswana, and we have to get across the Zambezi River. The only way to get across is a ferry, and Rhodesia comes in and they come and blow up the ferry. So we get stuck there, and lo and behold, a few days later, the truck is gone, the driver's gone, our food is gone. We had a trailer for the food, and we're stuck up on this border. There's no way to communicate with anybody. And we ended up being stuck there for 6 weeks. At one point, they brought another ferry down. We went down, we got our passports stamped out. Rhodesia swept in with 2 helicopters and shot that up, so we were running out of there. Eventually, we got back to South Africa. We sued the company. We went to the Supreme Court of South Africa 3 times. And then at one point, we went up through Rhodesia in the middle of the war, going 100 miles an hour on these convoys just to see Victoria Falls. So we weren't too bright. My buddy's a Cornell guy, and I'm a Northeastern guy, so I really blame him for a lot of the decisions we made. So anyway, that's the background of the book. So I think, well, I'm going to write this book, you know. And then I quickly find out that there's 2 questions people always ask you when you tell them you're going to write a book. They say, what's the genre? And what's it about? And you think, oh, those are easy questions, right? Well, it's about me. So I guess that's called a memoir, but I don't like that word because it makes me sound like I'm dead or almost there. So I'm just going to say it's an autobiographical book. And it's about adventure. It's a true story. True story. I'm going to transcribe this journal, make it nice. And what's it about? It's adventure travel. Easy. This is going to be an easy thing to do. So I write the first line of the book. Will you marry me when you get back? Already I'm in trouble. Because it wasn't my wife that asked me that question. So I said, hey, honey, you know, there might be some references to a previous relationship in this book. Is that okay? And she was gracious as always. But the thing was, I realized, okay, maybe this isn't going to be so easy. I get through the book, and it's kind of like, there's a lot of kind of interesting stuff happens, but it's kind of travel log-ish. You know, it's not a story, but all these kind of things, you know, happen back to back. So I start enhancing a few things. I make the explosions a little bigger. You know, the conditions a little bit worse. So, you know, I decide, well, let's say that this is, we'll just say it's based on a true story. I'm trying to cheat a little bit, right? So I do that, and, you know, it's getting a little more juicy. And then I decide, well, I'm spending time. I want to sell some books. You know, I'm going to do this. I want to at least sell a few. So does anybody know what sells? Like, what sells? Books, ads, movies, what sells? Sex, that's right. So I'm going to throw a little sex in there, all right? Which I guess if I did that, then I'm going to have to just say it's an autobiographical fiction, all right? I wish it wasn't, but so it's an autobiographical fiction, and you know, so I'm not going to put sex down here. I'm going to clean it up. It's about adventure, travel, and romance. Now, okay. Then I realized, well, there's a lot of history in this book. You know, we were in the Supreme Court of South Africa. We were blown up by the Rhodesians. There was an assassination attempt on Joshua Nkomo, who was the leader of the group fighting the Rhodesians. You know, we went up to Rhodesia. So there's a lot of things I'm trying to teach people in it. So let's just add, it's an autobiographical historical fiction. I know it's starting to get long, but that's what it is. And now we've added politics and bigotry. You know, like we were in the center of, you know, the peak apartheid time, and you know, white Rhodesia trying to hold on to their white rule. So we've got those 2 things. So now I said, well, maybe I'll tell a lie. So I'm bolder. So I decide, you know, this research lab we visited in Liberia, I'm going to have the guy ask us to bring something down and carry it with us and give it to somebody in Zambia. I didn't know what it was yet, but I'm just going to add, you know, it's loosely based on a true story. No, autobiographical historical fiction, loosely based on a true story about adventure travel, romance, politics, and bigotry. And then I say, well, what are we going to bring? And it turns out we're going to bring this African nesting dolls down with us. There's a bunch of nesting dolls like those Russian Matryoshka dolls. And this has genetic information. And in the book now, he wasn't really doing hepatitis research. He had developed a gene editing technology. Now, I know that hasn't happened until recently, but if you read the book, it actually makes sense. So he develops this genetic editing technology, and we're supposed to deliver this. So we're going to add science to this. And I actually, you know, I kept it pretty simple, but you'll learn something about how genetic editing works. So we have genetics too. And the story is more interesting, but there's still pieces that need to get tied together. And then I remember, well, my first cousin on my father's side was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for 9 years. So, he was a radical back in the 70s and 80s. He co-founded the United Freedom Front. They blew up South African Airways. Their ideology was, anti-apartheid, anti-American imperialism in South America, et cetera. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to put him in this book too. So I pull him over to Africa, which he never went to. So I guess I'm going to now make it a semi-autobiographical fiction. But he never went to it. And he gets inserted into the Sela Scouts, which is the special forces of the Rhodesian army. And the cool thing was putting him in there enabled me to tie a lot of these pieces that were just initially a travelogue together. So we've added espionage, and this betrayal that happens. Now, the interesting thing was, you start writing this book, and you hit you're exploring your emotions about love, about racism, about travel, about friendship, and it's amazing. It's almost like you're reliving things and then exploring your own internal ideologies. So it was really a kind of an interesting thing to go through. And some of the things you have to say, am I going to write them down? And most of them I did. So anyway, I know we only have a couple of minutes, but that is how you write a semi-autobiographical historical fiction, loosely inspired by a true story about adventure travel, romance, politics, bigotry, science, genetics, espionage, and betrayal. Thank you.
Wow, right on the spot with the 10-minute mark, too. So do we have any questions for Dan, writing as C.L. Manning? Oh, Carolyn does. What? So what's the genre?
Well, so I'm telling you, I spent hours trying to figure that out.
Because you have to list it on Amazon.
Exactly.
You have to list the genre on Amazon.
So I have adventure, I have thriller, a lot of things do happen. And there are some surprises, but yeah, I can't remember. They have thousands of genres, I think, on there.
I
and
thought
you get
you
to pick
said
3.
Thriller, travel, adventure.
Yes, I do have travel adventure. Actually, I was number 1 I may still be, in Zimbabwe and Zambia for quite a while.
We have a question from Lisa.
Dan, what's your sequel?
The question is, what's your sequel to Rhodesian
yeah,
Doll Hunt?
I don't have the story yet. Most people have asked me to kind of continue. This is only a 4 or 5 month segment out of a 1+ year trip. And this was definitely the most eventful trip. The sequel might include carrier pigeons, and it might include, at the same time, there was the Israeli-Egypt Accord. I was actually in Israel when they gave half the Sinai back. So there may be a little fiction added to things that happened, and these carrier pigeons might save the accord, the peace agreement.
Another question?
How old were you when you started journaling your travels?
How old were
This
you
was
when
the
you
first
started
one,
journaling?
so I was 24. I had written a few little things, but I was 24. In the book, I make myself a little older to try and give myself more credibility. But yeah, I was definitely 24, and it was this guy, Mike Dockery, who in Liberia, when we got there, he was Bubba's friend. He said, write everything down because, you know, a couple of weeks from now, it's going to be normal, and it won't have that. So when you see something for the first time and it makes an impression, write it down. And that's what I did, and I just kept on going, you know.
Good advice for a writer.
Yeah.
See, you are a
I know.
writer. Another question?
What's the CL for?
What's the CL
Well-
in CL Manning stand for?
It stands for Crazy Luke. I asked my friends, that's what my friends call me. They call me Craze. My grandson calls me Papa Craze. I asked them how I got that name, and nobody seemed to be able to nail it down. But there was a wrestler called Crazy Luke Graham, and it had something to do with that. But it was so long ago that nobody could actually say this is when it happened.
Or you don't want to say.
And it's sad that I don't remember either.
Any other questions for Dan? And then we will have a question and answer at the end as well. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Another round of applause. And I do appreciate you all coming. It turned out to be a nice day. We were hoping for a chilly day. So thank you all for coming inside, even though it's gotten pretty nice out. We have one more speaker for you, and then again, we will have time for questions for all the authors at the end. So I will begin introducing our third speaker. Lisa Braxton is the author of a new memoir in essays. There's the genre. Dancing Between the Raindrops, a daughter's reflections on love and loss. Her debut novel, The Talking Drum, was the winner of a 2021 Independent Publisher Book Awards Gold Medal, overall winner of Shelf Unbound's 2020 Independently Published Book Award, winner of a 2020 Outstanding Literary Award from the National Association of Black Journalists, and was a finalist for the International Book Awards. She is an Emmy-nominated former television journalist, an essayist, and short story writer. She is on the executive board of the Writers' Room of Boston, a writing instructor at Grub Street, Boston, and the president of the Greater Boston section of the National Council of Negro Women. As impressive as climbing all those mountains, I would say. Lisa earned her BA in mass media from Hampton University, her MS in journalism from Northwestern University, and her MFA in creative writing from Southern New Hampshire University. Please welcome Lisa, author of Dancing Between the Raindrops.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see. Oh, I forgot. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see all of you here today. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a native of Bridgeport, Connecticut. That's where I was born and raised. My mom and dad were from Virginia. They got married in 1955, and they grew up poor in a poor area west of Charlottesville. They knew that because of segregation and other racial issues, they knew that if they stayed in the South, they would not be able to get very far. They didn't have any connections to go to college or money or those sorts of things. So the day they married at my great-grandmother's house, my uncle pulled the car up and took them to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And my dad had a dream of owning his own business. Initially, he worked in a factory, General Electric. That was a big factory in Bridgeport at the time. Mom did factory work too on the assembly line, putting together hair dryers. But once she knew she was going to have me, then she became a housewife. And so growing up, finally, my dad convinced my mom that he wanted to go ahead and go into business. So he eventually, after about 20 years, retired from General Electric and opened up a high-fashion men's clothing store in an urban area where they lived in an apartment when they first got married. But it was across town at this point because they got a house once my mom was, I think, 6 months pregnant with me, and they bought this building on the corner with a lot of traffic coming by, so it was a great area for it, called Braxton's Men's Shop. And so my dad and my mom, they became pretty well known in the area and got involved in civic activism. Dad was on city council for a while, NAACP president of that area, that sort of thing. I knew I wanted to become a writer. I was more of a child bookworm. I would stay in the house and Mom would say, Lisa, please go outside. It's nice out there. Get some fresh air. Play with the kids, in that little neighborhood, right, behind my house and the houses around us. I say, no, Mommy, I want to read, and I want to become when I grow up, I want to become a novelist. So I would read my Charlotte's Web, my Little Women, my Nancy Drew mysteries, which I love, but they drove me nuts because I had to go to the back to find out what really happened. Those drove me nuts. And I was crestfallen because my mother said, that's nice, Lisa, that you want to become a novelist, but you can't earn a living writing novels. So I was crushed at 5 or 6, 7 years old, and I said, well, in that case, I'm going to go into journalism so I can learn how to write and get paid for it, which I did. I was a newspaper reporter for a while. I did radio, television, but what I found was that the work was so all-consuming and exhausting, and physically and mentally exhausting. I had no time to write creatively until I quit journalism. How old was I? 46 when I went to Southern New Hampshire University to earn my MFA. To get your MFA, you have to write a first draft of a novel. The Talking Drum is about 3 couples and how their lives are affected when an urban development project takes over an urban area. It's a fictional city in Massachusetts. My main characters are a husband and wife who are running a business, and they think they're going to do very well at this business. They're running a bookstore, and they think that what's up and coming, the new civic center, will help them with their business. So a lot of it's based on being 8, 9 years old, watching Mommy and Daddy run the store, watching them have their husband and wife arguments when they come home about different things, because Mom had a certain way of, she knew she had a certain way of running a business, and my dad was very soft about it, giving people credit and different. He wanted to be people's friends. And Mom said, no, these are customers. So watching and observing what they were, what went on with them helped to inspire this story. When I go back to Bridgeport now, that urban area, it's been redeveloped, and they've put a grocery store there, and all those businesses, many that were black owned at that time, are gone. They were mostly, I think, Italian Americans and others, white Americans running these businesses when my mom and dad were living there as newlyweds, and over time, the black merchants came in. Now it's plowed over. So there's a lot in my novel that relates to what happened in my parents' lives, as well as other people. People say, oh yeah, that happened in my neighborhood. It's gone now. We had to just go somewhere else, and our family or extended family couldn't be together anymore, and we couldn't find another place to live. So it's very relatable. So let's say you fast forward, and of course, Mom and Dad were very proud of me with this book. They could see themselves in it, and I was hoping to get it published, and so Mom could think about how she said to me, you can't earn a living writing novels, and I'd said, that's my dream, to write a novel, and she lived long enough to see this happen. I had a hard time getting published. After I got my MFA, I thought I had a great manuscript, and I sent it out to different literary agents, and I got rejected over and over and over. After a while, I said, you know what, maybe, and they would tell me what was wrong with it in their opinion. So as I was making edits and tweaking it based on the feedback, I'd keep sending it out. And I kept getting rejected and rejected. And so then I thought, maybe I should go to some small presses. So I did that. I would send a sample to these small presses who publish you directly, and I was still getting rejected. Then I went to a conference, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs conference, held every year, and the year I went, it was in DC. And I put on some comfortable shoes. I went to the book expo, which is about the size of a football field. I went to every single booth and talked up my book. And some I'd already contacted, by email previously, and they either didn't respond or they rejected it. Oh yeah, I remember you, Lisa. I'll take another look at it if you want. I knew they were lying. So then after that, I went to every single booth except the last booth way at the end. There were some Canadian presses, and I said, well, they're Canadian. They won't be interested. So the second day after, calling my husband and saying, how things weren't going that well, I said, well, maybe I'll go back and talk to them. It can't hurt. So I went to Inanna Publications, the editor of Inanna Publications, at her table. I explained my book, and she said, oh, I like that idea. Why don't you send it to me, and I'll review it, and I'll take a look at it. So I said, can I just email it to you? No, I need you to print out the entire thing and mail it to me in Toronto. So I went to work. I snuck the guys in the print shop where I worked, got them to just behind the scenes make a copy of 400 pages. Don't charge me. Went to the post office, did the whole international mail thing, the form, the whole thing. And meanwhile, I heard nothing. Then my husband and I went on vacation to the Montreal Jazz Festival. And let's say it was February. I mailed it off. And then in July, we were at the Jazz Festival. And our phones were not international, so we couldn't get any phone calls or text. After the Jazz Festival, driving back, coming across the border, I turned my phone on, and sure enough, she says, it was several days before, right? She says, my board of directors voted yes for your novel. We love it, and if it's still available, we'd like to publish you. So I kept reading it over to make sure I wasn't hallucinating after 10 years of this. And then it worked out. Although Inanna Publications is a women's press, they champion the cause of female authors. They focus on the voices that would not otherwise be heard. They were having money problems, and so she gave me a publication date of 2 years ahead. But then when that 2 years came, I didn't hear anything, so I emailed her. She said, well, didn't you get my email? I said, no. They slashed a bunch of the authors they had offered contracts to, but I kept mine, though. She said, oh, we're still going to publish you, though, but the next year. So it was 2020, or 2019, I forget now, when my book came out. And I was just so thrilled to finally get my book published. When the UPS person came by with the box in my condo building, I ran down with my, what are those things, those hand cart things called? Ran down there, got the box, pushed it up into our condo. It made my husband stop everything and take a video of me opening the box. I mean, I was just so excited. By this time, Mom and Dad were there, elderly, in their 80s. Very sick. Mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Dad had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And on Mother's Day, it was also COVID happened. We didn't know how devastating it was going to be. And it was. A lot of people were dying. And so Mother's Day, my husband and I get in the car, and we drive to my parents' house in Bridgeport. I would not come in. She's got the mask on. All her hair is gone from the chemo. And she's like, please. And I said, no, Mom, you're not going to come in. But I took my book, and I opened it to the dedication page to Mom and Dad and smashed it against the window of the door so they could see it. And my father, with his Parkinson's, on his cane and coming down the stairs, which always made us so nervous toward the end, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And Mom was so proud of me. And it was just the greatest experience. Then, within 2 or 3 years, they really deteriorated. And part of my, I guess for me, what was cathartic was writing. I wrote essays about, I threw my mother her first pajama party when she was, after chemo, after the doctors said there's nothing more they could do. So we were watching the vice presidential debates. This is when Kamala Harris and Mike Pence were having their debate, and Kamala Harris happens to be in the same sorority that my mother and I are in. So I got my mother into her sorority pajamas, which someone had given her because of she was ill, and they gave us a present. I put my pajamas on, and before the debate, we took all kinds of pictures, and we were posing in selfies. And she did home hospice, so she had a hospital bed in the bedroom. And Dad's upstairs with it. He was almost deaf, so he wouldn't be able to hear the TV anyway. And he was the Alzheimer's. He was really getting annoying. So he's upstairs in my old bedroom, and we just had a great time watching it. And she was dozing off and on, and she put her head up and look. And I say, "Oh, look, Pence has a fly on his hair," and she's laughing. And we had a great time. That is in this book. So I continued writing more and more essays about growing up, and I remember Dad teaching me to ride a bike, and he's running next to me as I'm trying to and keep me from falling off. All those kinds of heartwarming stories. And I had about 70 pages, and I said, I think that other people might be able to enjoy these stories and feel that they're not alone if they're going through loss, because I found them very comforting and soothing. So I sent out a sample to different small presses. Within days, Sea Crow Press on Cape Cod, the publisher contacted me, and she said, well, if you can write about 30 to 40 more pages between the date that I called, or October, to December, write 30 or 40 more pages of stories, I'd like to publish you. So like a maniac, I'm writing more and more stories. I went to a grief writing class online to generate more stories. I used different creative methods. And by February, March, my book came out. And people who've read it so far have said they've cried, they've laughed. It was really touching. So I'm really hoping that anyone who likes family stories or anyone who's experienced loss will find humor, because my father was so funny toward the end. With the clothing store became his life, which in a way was good, but in a way was bad. And at the end, we got him into an assisted living place. And he kept saying, even toward the end, Lisa, because he was in Connecticut, Lisa, when you come back down the next time, bring your notebook and a pen, because I want you to write down what I'm going to do for my next business. He was determined, 90 years old, in his mind, he was going to start another business. And you might be smiling right now, Lisa, and laughing, but this is serious. Okay, Daddy, okay. So pretty much, that's pretty much my story. And this has been both a labor of love, and I realize that there are threads of Mom and Dad throughout both books. And I do hope that people enjoy my writing. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Lisa?
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. And the reason I say that is because it may give away a lot of things in Dancing Between the Raindrops. But when I first saw the title, knowing nothing about the book, when I first saw that title, it brought a lot of images in my mind. Very, not all the same. And I want to know what those words mean to you.
Let me repeat that into the microphone. I'm going to shorten it a little bit. The question, I think, refers to the title of the book, Dancing Between the Raindrops. And maybe, can you explain, or is it revealed throughout the course of the book?
Like you were saying, you had you have a title, but you have no book yet, right? Yes. Well, I had this titled years ago, Dancing Between the Raindrops, because I felt like I was going through so much, because at the same time that Mom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I lost my job. After my breast cancer treatment and all that, and my mom is sick, my boss calls me into a conference, which I thought was our regular weekly meeting, but her boss was there too. And I'm like, what's this about? And they shrunk my department, so I got laid off. My husband got laid off. And and Dad's Parkinson's was worse, and Mom's called me crying because he's running around spending money on lottery tickets. It was crazy. So I felt like there are moments when you just want to breathe and find the enjoyment between the problems, the laughter in between the sorrow. And I was saying to my brother-in-law, I have this title, Dancing Between the Raindrops, and he said, that's an interesting title. I had no book or any idea for a book, but once I started writing these essays, I said, oh, that title will work. So I had the title years earlier, and it fit for this, so I said, I'm going to go with it.
Great. Another question?
Could you share how long it took you to write the book? Dancing Between
How long it took you all together to write the essays for Dancing Between the Raindrops?
Well, interestingly, as I mentioned, this took about 10 years to get published. This book, there's some essays I'd written some years ago that I updated, revised, and a lot of new ones. It may have taken me a total of maybe 7-8 months. And to find a publisher took me about a week. This one took me 10 years. So, which is good because I'm getting older and older, so it's like, I got to hurry this stuff up. But it didn't take long at all.
I think we had another question here. Go ahead. Bob? I think so. Did you draw on your experience as an on-air journalist to write your books?
Well, I would say that with this one, with the talking drum, my main character loves photography, and she begins to work for a urban newspaper in the fictional city of Bellport. So she's out writing stories. She has to work on deadline. So I fictionalize what it's like to work as a journalist. In this book, at one point, you may be aware that when people have Alzheimer's and dementia, they sometimes wander off. And it was very upsetting when my dad would wander off and my mother would call the police upset. And I did an essay about that, but it takes the form of a broadcast news formatted story, the script. And I show, the visuals. I have the two anchors who are saying, we're on the lookout for Julian Braxton. Here's what he looks like. He's been missing this long. So I used a broadcast script format in this one. So and also, when you're working in journalism, you have to deal with editors and deadlines and rewrites. And so I learned those skills that helped me to be more understanding. Like, there's some people who self-publish and they don't want to work with an editor, but I know that they are good editors who can make your work they can polish it and make it really good. You have a good story, but they can make it shine. So being able to tolerate and accept and appreciate editors and the deadlines and those things, that's been very helpful. If I can just say one more thing. Right now, I'm promoting this book right now, and I hired a publicist. And one thing that she has me doing is writing blog posts and also doing Zoom interviews. Blog posts and podcasts on Zoom. So I have these deadlines for these blog posts, and there was one that was due to Monday. And so I banged it out last night. I think it's very good. But if not for my journalism, I would be freaking out about, I've got this deadline, I'm busy, I can't, but because if you have to get something done as a journalist, you make it happen. So those things have helped me.
Okay, one question from Carolyn. Did your mom and dad ever get to read your first book?
My mother read The Talking Drum way back when it was a manuscript and was a mess, but she read that and she enjoyed that. Also, I have a story in here where before she passed away, she told me how proud she was. I mean, she was at the point where the cancer had already gone to her brain, but she said to me, "Oh, The Talking Drum," because she had a copy of this in her bookcase right by her bed, and she said something about, she put some dollars next to it. "Oh, take those dollars, that's for you, The Talking Drum." And she was just so happy when she said the words. And my dad, and this is a side story, but he would not, after Mommy passed away, he wouldn't leave the house, and Sylvia, my sister, and I live not nearby. So we wanted him to go, he wouldn't go. So I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh, we had to sue him to get the house. We had him put into assisted living, a memory care unit, and he did say to me on Zoom once that he was so proud. He said, I read 36 pages. I'm sure he had the aide read to him, but he was so proud. And I said to myself, with his mental state, to have read the 36 pages or to think he did, that just makes me so happy, so happy.
All right, could we have another round of applause, please, for Lisa? Thank you, Lisa. So we have a little time for our general questions, and we did have one about, was it publishing on Amazon? Your experience? Yeah, the question is about publishing with Amazon versus other ways in your experience. So I think we have Carolyn and Dan can both talk about that. If you want to, Carolyn, did you want to talk first?
So for the children's books, I feel like they might be a little simpler than larger books just because there's more content to it. Again, my friend from high school kind of walked through the process with me, not the whole thing. But it's not rocket science, but there is a little bit of a learning curve to once it's uploaded. And on the back end of Kindle Direct Publishing through Amazon, they will provide an ISBN number, which all books have to have, like an international coded number for I think it's Library of Congress, is that what it is?
Yeah, International Standard Book.
Yeah.
International Standard Book number.
So if you self-publish through Amazon, they will provide that for you, so you don't have to pay for it yourself. If you choose to, you can choose to buy your own also, and then take your book to another outlet to sell. Like I can't mine her through Amazon, so I can't like have this on Barnes and Noble because the ISBN number is through Amazon. But I could purchase a new ISBN number and upload it to another company format, whatever. But once it's on there, they have a whole back-end page for publishers, for authors, and you can advertise and you can have a little author bio on your Amazon page. So it's kind of cool. I could have tried to get it published, but it might have taken years, and I was just like, I just want to get this done. So, yeah.
Dan, did you want to say anything about Amazon?
It turned out everything isn't as easy as you think it is. I tried to get an agent. I tried for 7 months. I contacted over 80 agents. Most of the agents, I'd say half, don't even want a sample. A lot of them want 5 pages, 10 pages, 30 pages is a lot. So it's really difficult. I had a couple of nibbles, but I didn't get anything. So I went to KDP, that's Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon. Now you format your manuscript, it's double spaced, CG times 12, 1-inch margins, all this stuff. Then you go to put it in a book, and it's with the Kindle Direct Publishing. Well, do you want 5.5 and by 8.5? Do you want 5 by 8? Do you want 9 by 6? What kind of color paper do you want? So if you change anything, your whole manuscript changes, because this double spaced, it doesn't fit into, it doesn't look like that. So everything was a learning curve. The picture that's basically one file that you have to create the entire book on one file, and then you can't just use JPEG. You have to use this CMKY or something.
All right, I think we
format.
get the
So
idea.
it was just crazy and just more difficult than I thought. Yeah.
More difficult, yes. I just want to give a quick plug for our writers group that we have here at the library, which Dan has been a member of for a while. So we've been experiencing this process with him, and it's been great. It's been great. Any other questions for our authors? Norma.
Maybe for you and for you, how do you deal with attribution? Because sometimes you have, in your case, you have your parents' permission to use their names. No? Did you give them fictional names? And also in your case, you have these characters with you, Bubba.
Let me just repeat the question. The question is about using real life people in your work. How did you manage that?
Yeah, so I did get, we have a member of our writing group, Willie Weidman Pleasance, and she scared the bejesus out of me and told me I needed to get releases from certain people. Now, I learned a lot about liability. You can't defame a dead person, so that's not, if somebody's dead, it's not an issue. I was surprised at how many people didn't want their name used, so I just changed the names. I hated to do it at first, but I just changed the names. But I did get releases from half a dozen people.
In my case, I would say over the last 20 years, I've been writing personal essays, and sometimes, Mom and Dad appear in them. My father, I didn't even mention to him about it because he wouldn't have minded, but he was usually in the background of most of these stories I wrote years ago, so it was no big deal. My mother, I would tell her, I've written this essay about when I was taking piano lessons and you were mad because I wouldn't practice, and she would just say, well, you saying anything bad about me? I said, no. It's all very, very good. I think I showed her a couple of them, and she was fine, but she was thinking, don't say anything bad about me. Why would I say something bad about you, Mommy? So once I went through that whole process with her years ago, she was fine. And fast forward to Dancing Between the Raindrops. On Facebook, I would mention, my book is coming out, or it came out, and one of the essays was in another publication, a literary magazine, before the book came out. I didn't know that my relatives in Virginia were reading my whatever I put online, in the fact that essay you could read it online in that other publication. And they were very upset about a mention of my grandmother. As it turns out, my grandmother had a very brief relationship with the doctor she worked for. This is back in the 1930s. The result was my mother. And so my aunts and uncles, my mother's siblings, were just really upset about that, and it took them a while to get over it. They were afraid that other people in their little community, I say little because it's a little village community, were going to laugh at them and talk about them. I mean, grandmother's been dead since the 1990s, and she was born, I think, in the 19-teens. But they were afraid that cousins on my father's side were going to laugh at them. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, I mean, I didn't realize that they would even read my stuff, and then they would be upset about that idea, you know? So I was one of these people who when I even teach memoir writing, and I say, check with your family and friends and whoever to make sure they're okay with it. And I ended up being on the receiving end of what I was trying to tell people to be aware of. So in that respect, that did happen.
Yeah.
But they're okay now. They said they're okay now. In fact, a couple of them, I went down to Virginia to visit 2 weeks ago, and a couple of my aunts have actually read the book. And once they read the rest of it, they seem to be okay.
Thank you. I think this might not happen yet with Carolyn, but probably others in your family and friends of a writer, you start to know, are you going to use this? Is this for something going in your book? So that is all the time we have now for our questions, but the authors will be going to the tables in the back. You can ask questions individually or chat, purchase books, and help yourself to some refreshments. So I wanted to just say the authors' names one more time. We have Carolyn Killian, author of the Bee Beluga series. We have Dan Manning, writing as C.L. Crazy Luke Manning. Yeah, that'll help us remember it. And we have Lisa Braxton, writing as Lisa Braxton, author of Dancing Between the Raindrops, and Dan's is Rhodesian Doll Hunt. So thank you again for coming, and thank you all.